Hey, what up, friendos? Welcome back. We're talking today about Final Stand Ragnarok. You've probably not heard of that unless you're frequent of my MMO coverage of Camelot Unchained, which was supposed to be the new version, Dark Age of Camelot 2.0, an old MMO that a lot of people really enjoyed. It went to Kickstarter in 2013. So just from that sentence, you already know that this story goes to a real dark place for the fans, because 2013 was 11 years ago and the MMO is still not released. In fact, it's been in beta now for the better part of that 11 years, but it was never really a beta, and they've been testing like the same sort of patches focused on like UI design for months and months at this stage. And the news here, because I do like to check in on the Kickstarter MMOs every now and again, just to see what's going on. Okay, brief history. They said that there was news for the game coming out, and then the news for the game coming out ended up being another game called Final Stand Ragnarok. And as you can see from this SteamDB chart here, it really didn't go very well. If you look at like the player history of when it came out, release here, they've never had more than like a few dozen players online at once. And this is like a tower defense sort of like wave fighting game. There's currently 0 players online, and yet they're still releasing updates for this. And the fucking funny news is that they just actually released an update that puts cash shop, a functional cash shop in the game, plus skins in a game that there is literally no players, a 24-hour peak of 4 people. And obviously the game goes through like hour stretches throughout the week where there's 0 people online or 1 playing on their own for some reason, which must be people on the team, surely, because I can't imagine other people playing this. But let's have it summed up by Chris Neal of Massively OP, and then we'll go over some other stuff relating to Camelot Unchained and Final Stand Ragnarok. So Final Stand Ragnarok, you all remember that game. It's a side project of Camelot Unchained studio Unchained Development that went into its 3rd early access release this past March, and is still in early access to this day, even as it put out a 1.0 update. Usually, of course, 1.0 means that it's release, but who cares? The game is back in headlines once again thanks to the 1.2 update that arrived earlier this week, which has introduced another lineup of features headlined by the new champion, Carthalon the Gladiator, a melee damage dealer and healer who swings 2 blades through enemies to build up further, which can then be spent to heal allies and buff himself. Another major update is a revamp to the progression trees, and the final update is a more compact, repeatable and challenging experience for smaller parties to take on. And not only that, of course, it's now also got, there you go, new character skins. And as you can see, fucking fantastic skins, amazing. Who wouldn't want these skins in a game that literally nobody is playing at any point? Sorry, I'm just looting my kills on RuneScape real quick. You've got bare-chested, thick-thighed, strong man wearing some ropes, and then everyone else is in a bikini and things. Cool. In any third-person game, you're going to spend the vast majority of your experience staring at your chosen character. That means watching them hack, slash, and blast their way through thousands of enemies in an epic battle for the ages. Epic. No players playing the game. Very epic. But not every battle has to be fought with grim, dark determination. There's always room for sunshine. That's why it's cap off summer full of FSR updates. We'll be releasing our beach collection. It's time for the champions of Ragnarok to soak in some sun and catch some snow waves, available for purchase through the in-game store. Make sure to pick them up so you can close out the summer in style. Who are you speaking to? There is nobody playing this fucking game. Who is this update aimed at? Like, more people wrote this update than play the game. Like, this was probably proofread by more people than own the game. Like, I just don't get it. I've never understood, other than there's like a very, and I always have to preface this because people like to call everything a scam, and I guess it's easy to do. I don't think this was ever a scam. I think it's just, obviously he's taken in investment. He kickstarted the game, put his own money into the game, built a game engine, which he's then basically took investment on the game engine, and due to that investment, they've made side games. There's like a proof of concept for the engine, I guess, to maybe get in more investment or whatever else, and to put a product out there. And then a bunch of press releases came out where he's talking about like, oh, you know, the engine this, the engine that, we're going to be able to license it out, etc., etc. And of course, the focus doesn't seem to be on the MMO, even if maybe he's going to come out and say, oh, the focus is still on the MMO, and maybe he'd say that to me if I was to bring this up to him. But with you updating this and the MMO being literally 11 years in development, without people shouting from the rooftops, oh, the beta build's amazing now, it's great, we've been testing all this great stuff, it just seems odd. And what is even more odd is that 5 months ago, Camelot Unchained developers spent money to push this game to streamers, which I'm just going to say, like, from a common sense perspective, right? What are we even doing here? What are we looking at? Why would this be a thing? If Final Stand Ragnarok basically exists as a game that requires very little resources and people aren't really taking time away to develop it because all the resources going into the MMO and the engine, why are you sponsoring influencers to play the game? Like, they sponsored Sacriel, Dan's Gaming, and Co Carnage to play this game on stream together. And this happened, if you go March 27th, if you look at the player numbers on the DB for March 27th, like, look at this. It didn't move the dial at all. It was just like a normal day. And they paid thousands of dollars for this, by the way, because a streamer of Co's size and Sacriel's size and Dan's Gaming size, you're not getting this for like a couple grand. So it just doesn't make sense to me. What were you promoting here when you're paying streamers to play the game? Because it did nothing. Like, just the fact is that nowadays, if a game's good and it's just not got eyeballs on it, as soon as you get eyeballs on it, they're gonna play, and then they're gonna show other people, and they're gonna tell other people, and then it's gonna rise the ranks of the Steam charts and things like that, and people are gonna buy it and they're gonna play it. Surely it's got to dawn on you at this stage that you've paid for 9,172 people to be watching live on Twitch people play this game, and it drove 0 people to play. If this is just like a side project, why are you adding a cash shop to it when nobody plays it and nobody buys it? There's no new players coming in. Why are you putting time into writing these things out, saying like, oh yeah, you can go buy this stuff? Why are you putting money in to streamers to showcase a game that obviously they'd have played that and be like, oh yeah, oh, this is cool, logged off and just been like, thank God they paid me for that, because holy shit, that was fucking trash. And that's why nobody played it again, because as you can see, it did nothing. The player base continued to go down, and then they have spikes when, like, I assume these like playtest days where the community must organize like, oh, let's all go on today, 40 people. But it makes it look really bad when you say, oh yeah, all our focus is still on the MMO, and then you're paying people probably, I mean, even for my stream, and it gets like 100 concurrent viewers because I never stream, the companies would offer you like $500 to play a game for an hour. So I can't imagine for somebody the size of these that get multiple thousands of viewers at a time are doing this for any less than like 3, 4, 5 grand each. Maybe they did them a deal so that they could come and play a terrible game, but who fucking knows? But like you can see, there's no interaction on any of these posts. I wonder how many people are in their Discord server for Final Stand Ragnarok. 198 members, 76 online. This game, by the way, released like multiple years ago. 2021 it released, and they've been adding updates to it and nobody's playing it. And this was obviously something, again, that came up during an announcement on the Camelot Unchained stream where he's like, oh, we've got big exciting news. Here's this thing nobody asked for, nobody wants, and nobody's going to ever play. And then the way that they styled it out was, oh, it's not taking any development resources, it's not used any of your guys' money, which realistically all that money that people paid during the, like, you know, couple $1 million or whatever it was that was given during Kickstarter and then funding on their own website, all that shit's been gone for like a decade. They're obviously running on investor funds, Mark's own money and things like that. So when they say none of your money's gone towards that, of course that's true. That money went fucking years and years ago. That's all gone. But there's just weird things about this. Like, for instance, Mark promised that he'd give refunds to everybody if they were upset with the game still and the game state in 3 months' time. Just give me 3 months and then I'll refund you if you want it. And then, of course, he didn't refund everybody. And there's been multiple years now of people saying, like, I want my refund that you promised us. And then some people got refunded. Some people have been getting the runaround for a long time, at least according to forums like this, where people are saying, still waiting 4 years for my refund. There's a refund thread where people post in there and talk about it, which isn't updated all that frequently, to be honest. But some people say that they're still waiting for their money back, which is just like, I personally don't think you should be able to get a refund on this because you donated basically to a Kickstarter. But at the same time, if you turn around and promise people and say, oh, I will give you your money back, at that point, you need to be held to that, right? Because you said it, and you said it to generate goodwill. You can't just say something to generate goodwill and then not do it. But you can look at their Twitter when they announced this update on July 18th. The thing gets 5 likes, 6 comments. According to this, there's been no update since January. This was posted a month ago, so maybe this is out of date. And somebody posted, they're developing one hell of a UI. It's all we've tested for I don't know how many months. At this point, I've convinced myself CU is just going to be Final Stand Ragnarok with a CU-styled UI. And of course, people say during this, and I did see this myself months and months ago, they said Camelot Unchained, the MMO that everyone had been waiting for and everyone put their money towards, will be releasing in 2025, which means they've got a year and a couple months basically before they're out of time on that one. Which, who knows, it's possible. But at the same time, it kind of doesn't make sense because people have said, oh, the reason there's not any updates coming to the beta that people have got access to is because they're waiting and they're going to put massive updates in there and then obviously it's going to release next year. But what's the point in having a beta server then if you're not going to have stuff on there for people to test? Because you've been running development that way for like 10 years. So why would you suddenly stop? But this is one of those things. If it wasn't for the fact that they'd pulled in massive sums of investment, which they absolutely have, by the way, they pulled in crazy sums of money from some fairly substantial investment firms in the gaming space. I assume predicated on the engine and not the actual MMO, because who gives a fuck about MMOs from an investment perspective nowadays? But if it wasn't for that, like, people would be thinking that this was completely dead because the updates are coming to a game nobody cares about. There's not that many updates in the first place. They're paying streamers to play a game that nobody fucking plays. The MMO's seeing no updates on the beta branch, according to social media. And this was posted 10 days ago, 7 months since the last news update. Top comment, Mark Jacobs is nothing more than a thief and a con man. There's a thread here from 5 days ago. I see the engagement in this subreddit maybe once a month. Jesus Christ, can all of you just let the game and sub die? I keep coming back and I still see people paying attention to this. I'm also this trash. I still have it in my heart that this game will come out and it will be what we always thought it could be. I just listened to a YouTube video of the old loading screen music of DAOC and that hit me right in the dick. I just want to set up a ballista behind a tree in the battlegrounds and snipe people. Post 5 days ago, I'm still waiting for my refund. I am too, or even a reply to my request for a refund. Like, I'm working on a video right now that is just basically the full history of MMORPGs on Kickstarter, and it goes through all of them. And of course, Camelot Unchained's in there, but it just goes to show when you actually go through line by line of all the Kickstarters that try to do an MMO, man, it's crazy that not a single fucking one succeeded in any way. There was a few that released, but even those are in like the 10%. Like, of Kickstarter MMOs that actually launched and took money from people and got fully funded, there's like 2 that actually launched, and one of them launched like 10 years ago and nobody's ever heard of it. And then there's like Crowfall. I've not finished going through all of them, so maybe I'm forgetting some, but there's some that were outright actual scams. There's some that are just like Chronicles of Valeria, which I'm not going to get into in this video. Star Citizen, if you consider it an MMO, which of course it's not really, but some people do. And then Camelot Unchained. Camelot Unchained is one of the few that's still actually in development. Of all the ones that launched back then, there was a window of like 2012 to like 2014, 2015-ish, where like a dozen Kickstarter MMOs launched, and of all of those, Camelot Unchained is basically the only one that's really still keeping up appearances in any way. But they're not really keeping up appearances if they're not posting news or updates to the beta people are paid for access to that they said would be consistently updated. And then you've just got this like weird fucking Final Stand Ragnarok game that they've invested money into trying to get people to play and get eyeballs on it. And I just have to question why. Like, why is that money being wasted when you should know just off looking at this that the game's not something people would want to play, even if they'd seen somebody who was paid to do so. And that's evidence from the fact that that's exactly what happened. Of course, it'll probably be another 6-12 months before we check back in on Camelot Unchained and Final Stand Ragnarok unless something crazy happens. Again, they do have the money to finish this game, as far as I'm aware, because they've had multiple rounds of investment, and the last time they had a round, I think it was announced it was like in the tens of millions of dollars. Which I must say, if that's the case, maybe the engine is fucking amazing, and that means that maybe an MMO will come out one day. But it seems to me that the engine is the core focus, because that's something that even if the MMO fails, the engine still has value, which would make sense from a business perspective. And I couldn't even hold it against them if you're looking at it from like their perspective of, oh, we've invested loads of money into this, at least we want the engine so that we can, have a future with this thing. But at the same time, if that's the case, then what about the people that paid for an MMO? There's obviously always going to be the question of, is that even a core focus anymore? Or is that basically just something that they're going to use to sell the idea that, oh, look at what this engine can do, if they can even get to that stage? They're questions that, of course, the community are going to be asking, but we'll wait and see. We've got a year and a bit, basically, to see whether or not they hold to their 2025 launch window. If this game is their idea of what constitutes as a good, epic, thrilling game that they'd want to release and put money into marketing, put money into a cash shop, and continually develop, I then have zero hope that this game turns out to be good, even with 11 years of development put behind it. Because I did try to play this game when it released, and man, it was fucking awful. It was really not fun. Because if you're releasing something like this, then, I'm never going to have confidence. But there we go. We'll check in again. We'll see what happens in the coming months. I'm sure we'll see some news about this when maybe they get ready to do like a big push and put out a huge patch on the beta or something, or open access it in some way. Who knows? But yeah, thanks for watching as always. Check out the links in the video description. Go buy Gamer Supps. You get 10% discount if you want to use my code KiraTV. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Peace.